what inspires me is the possibilities, right? The possibility that St. Louis can be bigger and better than it is now, and the steps that we'll have to take to get there. That inspires me. The work that we have to do to be collaborative.
Leadership, is it an art or a science? Given that my artwork Imperfect Pixels really embraces both art and science, it makes sense to look at leadership through different lenses. And civic leadership, it often requires balancing, not just the vision for what's possible, but the limitations of what's probable. And right in the middle is effective leadership. And leadership is really the ability to influence others toward a common goal. And tonight I get to sit down and interview City Treasurer and candidate for mayor and friend Tishaura Jones, dig into the work that she's doing as an elected leader. We're going to explore creative problem solving, the importance of shifting perspectives and creating sound policy that allows the vision that's being cast to manifest into a functioning system for all. It's so important, a functioning system for all. So this is Art and we're talking art and policy as we explore the power of leadership. Tishaura, thanks for chatting with me tonight.
Thanks for having me, Travis. Good to see you, my friend.
Nice to see you. First of all, how are you doing? Just how are you?
I'm a little tired, but getting through these next several days. But I'm also excited and can I be vulnerable? Anxious.
Yeah.
This is a huge job, and the timeline that's set before us with having a runoff on April 6th, and then inauguration is April 20th. God willing, I am the winner, but it's going to be a whirlwind of just a whirlwind time in my life.
Well, if anybody's up for it, you are. And I'm happy to support you, and I'm really proud of the campaign that you're running, and I'll be really proud to call you mayor in mid-April. But for tonight's discussion, I'm going to reflect back first on my exhibit, Imperfect Pixels. It talks a lot about the importance of perspective. And as a leader, in what ways do you shift your perspective to see maybe a more complete picture of what you're trying to address?
So some of the ways I shift my perspective are related to who I am as a person. And I bring all of my experiences to the table. So I'm unapologetically Black. I'm a woman. I'm a single mom. I'm someone's daughter. My sister's big sister, because there's quite the age gap between me and my sisters. And a family member. So, and all of that happens, well, my family was born and raised in North St. Louis. And so I bring all of that to the table with me as a perspective of looking out for the least of these, such as Matthew 25. So that's the sort of, perspective I bring to the table, to just try to make sure that I am living what I am talking about, that it's not just words on a page, or not just a speech or pretty words. I actually believe the things that I'm saying, especially, at the base of this campaign is a premise that you should be able to succeed here, regardless of your skin color, who you love, how you worship, your zip code, or any identity you hold. And right now, that's not the case in St. Louis. Half of St. Louis is left not to succeed, and we need to change that.
Well, you mentioned before we jumped in that the general election is first week in April, and then the inauguration is just shortly thereafter. As you're building your team, what do you think about the perspectives you want around you as you're building out your cabinet and your administration?
Yes, I want as diverse as possible when it comes to perspectives. And I try to do that now in the treasurer's office. I try to have people around me that are smarter than me, and also from different backgrounds. And I think I've done a pretty good job at achieving diversity in my executive team, and making sure that we all bring our diverse perspectives to the table, and then also do the important work of team building, right? Because I believe that a leader is only as good as the person that she puts around herself. So I also make sure that my staff can tell me no.
Mhm.
and say, hey, or pull my coattail and say, hey, you're about to jump off a cliff. We need to talk about this before you do that. And I think that's important to have that kind of perspective and empowering people to be able to push back when necessary.
Yeah, I think all too often leaders don't create that platform that allows for different perspectives to be introduced. I mean, we saw this without getting overly political. We saw this with the last presidential election that we had a person who only wanted perspectives that matched his own to be heard. And we saw what that did to the country. And so it is refreshing to think about uh, not just a leader, but the leader's platform that allows for diverse perspectives to be brought into the conversation.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, well, leaders, I guess, also like art, are often misunderstood. I know when I was first putting this work together, some people looked at it and said, "I just don't get it," and I think that's okay. Like that's fine. It's not easy to understand sometimes. I walk by art pieces sometimes and think, "Looks like a lot of work. I just don't get it." But I found that when I don't get things, it's because I'm not willing or I haven't done the work to try to get it. I think saying I don't get it is a cop out. It's really easy to just say I don't get it and then they walk on. Uh, I would imagine as a leader, people don't get you all the time, Tishaura. Uh, what do people misunderstand about your style and/or approach to leadership?
Um, you know, there is this sort of trope, and not just about me, but about Black women in leadership in general, that we're angry all the time.
Oh, the angry Black woman, right?
Angry Black woman. I mean, we saw it, well, with the former First Lady, Michelle Obama. We see it now with Kamala Harris, because they ripped her up when she went after Joe Biden on the debate stage. Well, that's what debates are for,
Yeah.
right? And I think that that's a huge misconception of Black women. They mistake our passion for being angry, but yet those same qualities are rewarded in men if they are passionate or loud or angry, right? And I think that that's a disservice to the especially to the women who are doing the hard work out here serving the people. And nowhere is that more evident than the editorial board of the Post Dispatch. I think they're up to maybe 35 or so. I've lost count of the number of crazy editorials that they write about me. But I think at this point they're overplaying their hand, because every time they write something crazy about me, I'm able to raise a lot of money. So keep on writing, Todd. Keep writing.
It's I wonder as I've been following your relationship with the Post Dispatch and the Post Dispatch's relationship with St. Louis politics. I'm wondering what's going to be. I wonder what their stance is going to be if and when you are elected and you're in this role. I mean uh, they've got to find a new subject, a new topic. There's so many other things. Tishaura, I do think you're interesting. Don't get me wrong. I can read about you all the time. But there's other interesting things to cover in St. Louis. They should expand their horizons a bit.
Yeah, so and also let me clarify, I have a good relationship with the hardworking journalists
Sure.
at the Post Dispatch. It's the editorial board that always seems to uh, you know, write the craziness about me.
Well, maybe it goes back to that idea that I started with this part of the conversation is if they don't get it, it's just easy to just not get it. The nice thing about the journalists is if they don't get it, they are actually wired and predisposed to investigate and
Mhm.
like to seek truth. So maybe there's a lot of not getting it and laziness that might go on. Uh, well, outside of COVID, and this is something that you and I think share as a passion. Outside of COVID, I professionally got to spend a lot of my time traveling for work, and each time I visited a city, it was important for me to learn something from that city. From either having coffee with somebody or meeting with another leader, and taking that back to not only improve my life or my job, but really to improve my city. And I know that you've gotten some flack in the past about traveling to other cities. But I also know that you've been able to take a lot of lessons and you've built a great coalition of leaders across the country where that you can mentor each other and lean on each other. What are some things that you've learned from other city leaders that you draw from and you put into practice?
Yeah, so when I first became treasurer, I reached out to then the treasurer of Chicago and the current treasurer of San Francisco, who had offices of financial empowerment, and each one of them spent a considerable amount of time with me to talk about how they did it, what some of the pitfalls were, some of their successes and failures. And as a result, now St. Louis has an office of financial empowerment. And in San Francisco is what we call the birthplace of children's savings, municipal children's savings programs, and they have one of the largest ones in the country. And I have been able to have a continual relationship, not only with the treasurer there, but also their staff. So we trade information back and forth all the time. And then also now I'm part of a network of other children's savings programs across this country where we share information, we share pitfalls, we share ideas. Even just recently, when we were going through our audit, I was able to pose a question to all of the programs like, have you ever been audited by the state? And, what did that process look like? None of them ever have. And so now I can provide more research to the field about what happens when your program gets audited.
Mhm.
And when I talk to my friends who are mayors of other cities, I see that the thread between some of the leaders that I call my friends are they're very inclusive, they're very open, they're very transparent, and seem to be available, right, to make sure that they or their staff are answering their constituents' needs.
Well, it's you mentioned that you were, born and raised and grew up in St. Louis, and I think regardless of what city you call home, it's dangerous to only have the perspective of your city, right? I mean, I think that's dangerous for any profession, and I think it's really, does a disservice as a public servant to only have the perspective of your city, because I think what you just shared was so important. Not only can you get information from other places to make you better at your job, but there becomes a point where you're a resource to those same people,
Mhm.
and I think that elevates the not just the prestige of the city, but it shows that you know these cities are all struggling in a variety of different ways. Nobody has figured it out yet. Whatever people think of as a perfect city, spend more than just 6 minutes there, and you'll realize it's an imperfect city.
Right.
But city leaders really can learn from each other. As you look at your administration as mayor, how would you want to continue that? What are some things that you think you'd like to do to continue to foster those relationships with other mayors and your peers in other cities?
Well, I already have a plan to tap a couple of mayors who are currently either out of office or on their way out of office, as they don't know this yet, as free consultants, to come and take a look and put a fresh set of eyes on some of the things that we're going through. Because, like my friend Steve Benjamin, who's the mayor of Columbia, South Carolina, they have done some things with their police department that have been simply phenomenal. And making it outward facing. And at the time the last time I visited with them, they hadn't shot anyone since the horrible shooting of the man who lost his life when he was shot in the back running away from a police officer. That was the last police involved shooting that they had
Hmm.
at the time that I was with them in 2019. And in Newark, New Jersey, for example, they're in the year 2020, their officers have only fired their guns 5 times.
Wow,
So
in the whole year?
in the entire year,
Wow.
even during the George Floyd Breonna Taylor protests,
Wow.
where citizens tried to burn down one of their police headquarters, they still did not respond with shooting people. So, what are those de-escalation tactics? What kind of culture did they build within those departments? And so, I am looking forward to speaking with my friends that are around the country to see how we can do that. And then also, public transit is the hallmark or the sign of a growing city.
Mhm.
So I am going to be laser focused on how do we expand our public transit in the city, and how do I use my existing relationships at the federal level the current transportation secretary and I served in a couple of groups together.
Hmm.
And so I look forward to giving him a call and saying, hey, what kind of programs are coming down the pipeline and what do we need to do to be ready?
It's
Um,
always nice. It's nice when a mayor makes a jump from mayor to cabinet level because because their peers that are other mayors of other cities have this direct line to to DC a bit more.
Right, right. And as we saw with the Obama administration, I think we're going to see the same thing in the Biden Harris administration, that they will have a laser focus on cities because they know that that's where most of the population lives, not trying to disrespect or disregard our rural brothers and sisters. But, cities are the economic engines of a lot of our states. And so I see that this administration is going to really be paying attention to how do they help cities get out of COVID and to build them back up.
Whenever I think of public transit, and I have this collection at home of transit cards that I get from any city I go to. So I spend my first day walking through a city on, just on foot. And then the second day I'll buy a transit card and take the public transit. And when I first moved to St. Louis in 2012, the first 18 months, I rode our metro system from downtown to Clayton every day and even out to Creve Coeur. I love it. I love public transit, but it's something we need to invest in because I think public transit just represents those journeys, right? The journey that people are on to go to work, to go to a ball game or a hockey game as we see so often. And so, yeah, I think I'm glad that you're going to be able to take a look at that and talk with former Mayor Pete, now Secretary Pete.
Secretary Pete, right?
Yeah. Was, one of the things that I think of a lot. Speaking of journeys, really, I'm always drawn to artists that have formal training, but I also love those without formal training. The self-taught folks, and I guess it's because I know that there's several paths to success. That there's no one direct path. And a person's journey is really important. And art, I love listening to an artist and talking to an artist and finding out what they got wrong and how that shaped the next piece that they created. But can you tell me a little bit about your journey in like specific moments that really shaped your approach to leadership?
Yes, so I'm what some might call a reluctant leader, and I talk really in detail about my journey. I did a recent TEDx talk that talked about my journey and how I got into politics, but I didn't want to be a politician. My dad was former comptroller of Travis Jones, and his career didn't end in the greatest way, and because of that, I said to God, I'm like, no, I don't think I'm going to be in politics. And my mother used to say the quickest way to make God laugh is to tell him what you would never do. And so I was appointed as committee woman in 2002 in the 8th Ward, and then ran for state rep in 2008. A year after I had my son, I literally launched my campaign, and when he was 3 months old, and he learned to walk. Just after I got sworn, or just after I won the November election. Um, then after being in the state house for two terms and becoming the first Black female assistant minority floor leader, I was asked to run for treasurer, and I didn't think that that was my path. And Mike McMillan, God bless him, he talked me into running. And I said to him, Mike, I don't even want to run for treasurer. I'm good right here in the legislature. And then he showed me some of the pathway, right, to victory, and that I would have been I was the only woman in that race against three other men. And that's when I also looked around the country to see what other treasurers did. And that's when I put financial empowerment as a part of my platform. And some of my colleagues in financial empowerment tell me that I'm the first treasurer to run on a platform of financial empowerment and win. And so was definitely treasurer for two terms, just got elected to a third. And now I'm running for mayor. And I would have never thought that this little skinny girl who was a tomboy who grew up on Julian and Hodemont would now be running for mayor of a major city, but God works in mysterious ways.
I was just thinking as you were talking about your career, thinking about some of the other candidates and their experience. One of the things that I appreciate about you is that you bring both legislative and executive experience to this candidacy and ultimately to your administration. Your time in the state house was invaluable. But being, the treasurer is an executive role. You're an executive within the city, managing a major department of the city. It's a citywide elected position, but that's rare. I mean, the mayor's role is the chief executive, the executive over our city government. Um, the other candidates have some legislative experience, but I really appreciate both the sides that you bring, both your legislative experience and your executive experience. I think that's nice and well rounded for a mayor.
I think so as well, because I know, like, so where the lines of demarcation are
Mhm.
between, where the city charter ends and where state law begins. And then also having those previous relationships, and I'm hopeful to be able to leverage those relationships towards a better relationship with our colleagues at the state level, for our city, because there's this huge urban rural divide, and we need to talk to our state legislators and remind them that 2/3 of the state's general revenue comes from St. Louis County, and Kansas City, or Jackson County. And so I look forward to working with the executives of those respective cities and counties, to possibly put together an agenda, and go to the state house and ask them, can you help us and work with us on these things? Because if our urban areas fail, the state fails.
Yeah. Well, I find leaders inspiring. I find artists inspiring. I can see some work by Kababe right behind you on your wall there. It's always nice to see some local art, local artists featured. But that inspires. What inspires you? Uh, what inspires you these days?
These days, wow, what inspires me? I think what inspires me is the possibilities, right? The possibility that St. Louis can be bigger and better than it is now, and the steps that we'll have to take to get there. That inspires me. The work that we have to do, to be collaborative, bringing everybody to the table with their different perspectives and different lived experiences, and truly becoming, really becoming, the city that we know we can be. The possibilities of, seeing the vacant land that's across the street from my house become, have houses built on it. To see, as I drive through North St. Louis, that you don't necessarily see the Delmar Divide as soon as you're going up Kings Highway or Union. I think that, our possibilities are endless, and I'm excited, and inspired to lead St. Louis into the 21st century.
Well, thanks so much. I'll tell you, my hope and dream for St. Louis, and this is not to alienate anybody that's out there, but I want St. Louis to be the hub for the Black middle class in the United States. And I'll tell you what, white middle class, you'll appreciate. Like, it'll be good for you too. Like,
Right.
it'll be good for everybody. But I mean, right now, I'd say it's Atlanta. Darren Jackson and I, when we talked last week, we were talking about Atlanta and how that is the mecca for Black, for a lot of Black middle class. But I think St. Louis has that potential as well, and I think it starts by having a strong Black woman running our city, and helping get us in that direction. So, thank
Yeah,
you.
I always say, when you solve for the problems of Black women, you solve everybody's problems.
Amen. Well, Tishaura, thank you so much for joining us. And for those that were viewing this, thank you for participating. And we'll get this up online so others can watch it too. Good luck next Tuesday, Tishaura. You got
Thank
my
you.
vote.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.